Hello everybody, and good morning. Welcome to part 6 of this run. So, once again, you might be saying, hey, this is a different spot from before, also, why are you at 15 instead of 1? Well, long story short, I just went ahead and skipped some stuff again. So, basically, we missed up to this point was about 3 runs at Timeout to get them up to about 12, and then from there, running through Farampa here to get over to here. Now, for some reason, I had the dumb idea of, you know, let me just go ahead and go through through Farampa over and over and over again, in hopes of trying to get the Spear Book. Now, granted, I'm not really sure why I did this, because there's technically not a whole lot of use I can make of it just yet. Basically, the main thing that could be gotten at this point is Bardiche, which I end up using later, but ultimately it's one of those things that I end up getting for free, so there's no real reason to go for the Axe and Spear Book. If you didn't know, it drops off the Rune Fencer that spawns on the bottom here. Essentially, the guy just kind of shows up there. A little bit of an annoying drop to get, because the guy tends to fly out ahead of everybody else, and also tends to have an issue wherein you immediately get swarmed by all his backup, which they all tend to sit on the bag if and when it drops. And on top of that, the guy has a whole lot of other drops that he can potentially throw down, so a bit annoying. Ultimately, I just decided, screw it, we're just going to go ahead and move on out of here. There's really no reason to keep doing it over and over and over. I'm not sure why I said screw that guy in particular with the Spiral Scourge, but there you go, an extra like 1200 or whatever would have landed on him. So, part of this part of Farampa here is that it definitely starts to show the limitations of what you can actually achieve on a solo run, and this actually applies to both versions, because, yeah, there's a lot of kind of sanity checks as far as damage and everything else goes in this game. So, as you can see here, they're still doing okay damage. Like, Denham's doing absolutely overwhelming damage, but still, like, all things considered, that is more than enough to wear down over time. And actually ended up using the wrong healing item there. I meant to go for a full heal, but didn't quite happen. So while he can run around one-shotting dudes, still, they're going to be thrown out a little bit more than Plink as time goes on. It's really only casters that get to the point where they're just completely, you know, worthless a lot of the time, but that's when they end up coming in with their debuffs. So, you know, there's a lot of kind of checks and all that they put in there to try to make sure that you couldn't do this kind of thing. So what now, Mitsuno? Anyway, you know, we're just going to go ahead and continue on with this run. So, yeah, one of those things is definitely the tedium of making healing items. I'm pretty sure that's one of the reasons that they did that. Because my, oh my, does it get annoying with all those healing items. Like, especially later on, it just gets pretty stupid. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, it's really stupid. I'm not really sure why I... Oh, right, I don't have teleport yet. I keep forgetting that. I was gonna say, I don't know why I didn't just self-target there, or just walk out of that thing, but it's not an option. That is something that you can do in OV, but not in this particular one. Actually, it's something that gets used a lot in the OV run, which, by the way, for folks that are watching both, the hiatus looks like it's over. So the rest of the OV run is going to be done live. So we're going to be doing it that way. There's probably going to be, you know, more stuff that didn't get cut out, but oh well. So far there hasn't been anything in Chapter 1 that got cut out anyway. We might just have a few resets on a few fights, but hey, that's kind of just kind of the name of the game. I'm pretty sure that's kind of to be expected when you're doing this kind of challenge. So yeah, despite having almost maxed out stats, like I was saying earlier, we're going to start seeing the limitations of that solo run here. So yeah, first of all, tremendous shots still do a ton. Again, this is the case in both versions. It's actually, the damages are pretty surprisingly similar. So yeah, he's getting 42s there through, basically through all his defenses and everything. There's not really any scaling damage applying, so that's why it's that low. That's kind of just the base damage that it does. So right, yeah, at this point I believe I was having some controller issues, so it's fine. We have a little bit of a second to talk about other stuff. Anywho, so yeah, was starting to run low on items. Wasn't really sure if I was going to continue on to the end of the forest. Really, the idea was just kind of explore and collect stuff while trying to get this class leveled up, because I wanted Lord up there as much as possible. And again, it was really a mistake to go for that class in the first place. because all things considered, there really is not much to gain in a solo off of it. Sure, you know, he gets decent stats and all that kind of thing, but it's just not worth it for the limitations. I honestly completely forgot about a lot of the limitations the Lord has in vanilla. It's kind of a bummer. Just because he's, I guess he's just trying to keep up politics or something like that, but he's more or less locked into to holy stuff. He can't use a lot of the dark items, which, again, the build ends up kind of relying on by the end, so yeah, spoilers there, didn't end up sticking with the Lord despite all the effort that's being put into it. Oh well, you know, extra stats and all that. And yeah, despite the fact that I frickin' time travel back 3 times to keep using the dang thing. But no, still end up not using it. Because you can't use Thanatos armor, can't use the Dark Spear. Dude's just too good for that. Apparently it's perceived as evil or something. I mean, the last guy did it, and nobody complained then. Hell, everyone still holds him up on a frickin' pedestal, but no. So yeah, I'm gonna go back to the Trident now. Get all of the +1s going, as you do. Take a quick coffee break here. Ah, that is some fine coffee. Man. Feels good to potentially be off hiatus here. Also, one more thing. Had time to go fix up some stuff around the house. I don't know if you can hear that. I can move this keyboard desk without it squeaking now, so yay! Stuff's all fixed and whatever. Kind of. There's a lot of stuff to do still. It's been busy as hell, but I'm glad that stuff might be back to normal now right before Christmas. Might be back to normal! Excited. Very excited. So, alright. I have to say, I've been routing out that OV run for, hell, it's been months now. This fight, oh my god, getting this one done is something else, because for that run, I kid you not, there's the trick that I have lined up more or less requires getting through all of Farampa and then also saving time during the hardest fight in it in order to go get a drop. Because apparently the 2H enchilada is friggin' stuck in that one mass fight at the very end. So yeah, that's always fun. That was one hell of a thing to figure out. And yeah, you can see here, ninjas are definitely doing better than everything else. Now, part of the reason for that is because with everything else, when you start resisting all their damage and everything, because of the way that they have everything balanced out, like in some cases, a weapon will have relatively low attack values, but it'll have really decent scaling damage. So for example, two-handers have that particular problem. So they end up looking like they do pretty much no damage, despite the fact that they would have potentially great damage if the armor system let them. Anywho, if you're wondering why they've got such high attack scores in OV, that's seemingly why. Anyhow, so yeah, like here, even though they're all just doing base damage in like the 20s to 40s, ninjas end up coming out on top because they can just repeatedly keep swinging both weapons. They get double the damage. Ends up working out pretty nicely for them. Yeah, definitely running low on items here. Was getting pretty close to bailing out of this little endeavor. Figured it was about time to get going there. Ah, man, those throw-ins are really, really punchy. Very, very punchy, but yeah, only the AI is ever gonna bother using those things. I think I picked up the throwing skill just for the hell of it. Because I was intending to try some stuff with it, because I was kind of curious whether a maxed out character would make them worthwhile. Yeah, I don't think I ended up doing that. So yeah, here was kind of an interesting conundrum, because I wasn't sure whether to take the finisher on those two and then go grab that card on the left, or to try and heal and go pick up one of the items or something. So ultimately ended up going for that, just because they were the biggest threat. More than likely, they would not be able to pull anything off, and yet, despite the odds, there we go. Friggin' Petrify. Ends up landing about 24%, and then, yeah, stuck in a little bit of a weird spot here. Though, thankfully, the casters can't really do anything at that point. It's just a ninja that can actually act. So still petrified, and that's going to be that, then. Problem. And there we go. End up getting out of it just in time. Her turn was just coming up. End up having to use one of those +2s. Boy, still very dry weather over here, unfortunately. It was very, very close there. But that's the kind of stuff that happens in the solo run. Thankfully made it out just in time. So, okay, next up, stabbity stab on the one actual threat here. Goodbye. You know, I say it despite being completely disabled by the wizard over there, but that's fine. He won't be able to pull it off again, right? I guess we'll just have to see. It's alright. Now, this may be kind of completely out of left field, because I'm not sure how many folks here were also on the Armored Core side of things. Recently, I was watching over this this Marble Olympics type thing, and also watching a few other events, and it kind of got me thinking of a better way to handle the old Formula Front tournaments, to try to make them a bit more fair and all that kind of thing. So might be resurrecting that within the next month or so. I was thinking probably maybe in a couple weeks or something, start taking entries for one of those. Because yeah, I have an idea for a kind of points-based system that should make things a little bit better. All right. So yeah, we're at the stage where we're just chucking rocks at everything, as you do. Not chuck all them rocks, of course. Of course, the funny part of all that is that, yeah, there's already enough projects going on without starting a Formula Front thing. But you know, I will say I'm pretty sure there's going to be more of that stuff coming out from the community pretty soon. And if the new format works, maybe there can be a little bit of a resurrection in how those tournaments go and all that kind of thing. Because yeah, that's always the shame. It's such an amazing game, but yeah, the actual balance for the single player portion of it is dubious, to say the least. Now, part of that also is because I'm hoping to see if a similar format would then work for a kind of Ogre tournament, probably an OV tournament and all that kind of thing. I was threatening to do that a while ago, but it never ended up actually carrying through with all of it yet. So we'll see. It's an idea at any rate. All right. So I was mentioning earlier about those limitations. So one of those big ones that's going to be coming up soon is versus monster units, and it's actually one of the reasons that we ended up sticking with Dragoon. Not even for Dragon Slayer, funnily enough, because that ended up not even getting used for the most part. But yeah, just the fact that well, they're a major problem. And with the Lord there, they can do Spiral Scourge and all that kind of thing. But for some reason, the Dragoon's just better with it. But yeah, we'll get there. So I was considering whether or not to switch back to the Scorpion. It probably would have been an okay choice. It's just that weird little breakpoint where the Scorpion is intentionally made to not, like, it's somehow very exact in how it just exactly doesn't work after a certain point, which is a bummer, because, you know, as messed up as it is, every game that lets you have a poison weapon of some description, I'm usually always on top of that. I don't know. It's just something that seems extremely reliable about it, you know? Alright, so right here, this fight is truly something else. Because yeah, you know, you might be thinking, okay, we're doing like 2 hits to actually take out a dragon. But here's another thing. They all start coming out with a Dragon's Eye, and as you may know, that means they can't miss. It's a little bit of an OP ability. In fact, there's a lot of things that are kind of OP about dragons, but as with many things about vanilla, it's this weird thing where they're overpowered in the most boring way possible. So it's like, okay, they can never miss, but only with, you know, their basic abilities that never really seem to have any secondary effects. So like they have this guaranteed hit move, but then their breath is like, oh, it does misstep. What happened to the old paralysis breath and stuff like that, you know? So yeah. At least their breath attacks are pretty boring in this. But okay, so I end up taking a step back, trying to go for building up a meter, taking that 100 and finishing them off. That's the nice thing about Spiral Scourge, since it's technically accuracy-based, and when it's at 100, it's as good as it's really going to get. So, yeah, you're basically taking that at that moment. It seems to ignore defense, but use basic attack. Like, I don't know if it ignores maybe 50% defense or something like that. It definitely feels like it does some version of ignoring defense. But either way, it's functionally a triple attack, so it is what it is. They keep going for their friggin' resonances. Oh my goodness, who... every time that I look at vanilla and I'm thinking, oh man, look, here's all this old good balance. They maybe had an idea for everything. And then I look at the resonances and it's like, oh, no they didn't. Oh man, there's a lot of stuff they forgot. Oh well. Again, I know I've said it a million times, but for all the stuff that they forgot in this game, it's just such a miracle that it even exists. Like, how much crap is in here, you know? Like, meanwhile, you're looking at games with much simpler mechanics that can't seem to balance their stuff out after like 10 years. So this massive, well, I guess semi-massive, whatever, kind of fight break out recently, because there were a bunch of folks talking about Tome, and like it was just this whole thing where a lot of the older folks that had been around from the very beginning got really mad that a lot of their old metas didn't work anymore. Meanwhile, a lot of the newer folks just preferred not having all those old ones there, so it just kind of wound up... I'm pretty sure every community's run into this at some point, where there's some major change and then there's a bunch of people throwing hissy fits. Like, and the messed up part is, it's not necessarily... like, hissy fit isn't necessarily the best term, but it's more of just like a panic attack that comes in, of like, oh man, my old thing is dead, somebody broke my baby, you know, it's... like, if after somebody's put hundreds of hours into something, it's understandable that they would get a little bit antsy, you know? So yeah, it was this weird thing where, honestly, the changes there were so oddly specific, I'm a little bit surprised that it happened. Alright, so yeah, round 2 was trying out the Dragoon here. Sorry, my nose is being a little bit weird at the moment. Just one sec. Okay, and back. Sorry about that. Yeah, one of those weird cases where it feels like you gotta blow your nose, but not really. Joys of cold weather. Okay, anyway, so what I was going on there, it's one of those weird kind of gatekeeping type situations. And honestly, I'm not really sure who benefits out of that whole situation. It's kind of awkward, because there's people going and writing these extensive articles and things like that. Like, here's all these really specific things that are wrong, somebody go fix them. And it's like, okay, so there's like one boss you don't like 40-something hours into the game, and you thought they were better when they were dumber or something. It's like, this is really oddly specific, but okay. But, oh well, I'm sure they've got valid points, but it's one of those things where, despite having maybe 200 hours into that game, I ended up looking through all of this list. It's like, yeah, I don't recognize any of this. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on. But oh well, it happens. Though, weirdly enough, it seems to happen a lot with roguelikes. I'm not really sure why, but it always seems to bring out just, like, really sharp attitudes from some folks. Like, probably a great example of that, I don't know if anyone watching this would have watched the Sword of the Stars, The Pit, that I was putting out a while ago. But it's a really fun little game. Hell, I say little game, but honestly, it's more feature-rich than a lot of other roguelikes out there. But the general premise, if you're unfamiliar with the genre, the general premise of it is supposed to be, well, like the game Rogue. It was this old DOS, not DOS, this is old, like, ASCII game from friggin' forever ago. And yeah, the general idea is you're going through X amount of floors with a permadeath system of sorts. Like, there's usually revive systems of some variety, like really rare items you'll find that'll bring you back to life once or something. Or maybe you'll get the favor of some god or something and they'll bring you back once. You know, the idea is that it's the whole kind of D&D role-playing kind of thing. So you're going and you're building your characters in particular ways and stuff like that, but they all have to have some really sharp limitations and usually severe resource restrictions. So, for example, in a lot of those older ones, you had to worry about starving all the time, or you know, you had to worry about keeping up with whatever your character's religion was, or else suddenly just random crap would start going wrong. Like, it was fun. The idea was that there's so many little things you can do that you can create some really bizarre interactions, but there's constantly that risk because you're essentially running one life. So if at any point, by the way, 25%, thank you, dragons don't understand how odds work. But yeah, so yeah, at any point you can just be completely wiped out by something that you didn't even see. So it adds this kind of cool tension to it all. And I believe this was the point at which I decided to cancel out its map, by the way. But anyway, that particular one is what I would best describe as a successful Resident Evil roguelike, for lack of a better term. Like, take the best parts of, say, like Resident Evil, System Shock 2, that kind of thing, and make it into a top-down roguelike. So yeah, so that's the Pit, is like this sci-fi thing where you've got all these different characters and whatever else. The idea is they're going down these 40 floors to get to this person at the very bottom. All going in there for different reasons, and they all play differently, all that kind of stuff. Now, the cool thing is that most of it is MacGyvering stuff together. So, like, you go in there, like, you got your army guy, goes in with his, machine gun, pistol, and machete and everything, and has all this pile of grenades, and then you realize pretty quickly, like, okay, this guy's got a lot of firepower on him, but, dude can't open doors. Guy does not know how to open doors aside from his breaching charges. So, you have a problem there. Or, you get your engineer guy that, sure, that guy can build just about anything, but if he gets friggin' sick or whatever else, he can barely resist it. So, he ends up coming in with some items to resist whatever's going on there. But generally speaking, all of them have some pretty sharp limitations. Like, my favorite guy is this bug guy that's, he's basically brain dead. He's functionally brain dead. He's got the best armor in the game. Or rather, best inbuilt armor in the game, so, like, even if his actual armor gets blown up, which, yeah, all of your stuff is destructible and everything, but, like, even if his armor gets blown up, he's still got inbuilt armor on him. So it's, like, the idea is that they all play differently, they've all got extreme limitations. Like, that particular guy starves like crazy, and is actually viewed as the worst character in the game for the most part, which is why I ended up liking him in the first place. Because anytime there's a game that says, hey, this character is absolutely hands down the worst, I'm like, oh, I have my new favorite character. Awesome. So, that kind of stuff is fun. So, what I was getting at, though, is that game is, like, just awesome in terms of the kinds of stuff that you can do in a roguelike. Because, again, the meat of that genre is the cool interactions that end up coming together. Like, think of, say, Binding of Isaac is a pretty commonly known one, right? So you end up getting all these different items, and all of them end up behaving differently depending on what other items you have, and it leads to this interesting thing of, like, do you take this thing? Do you leave it behind? Do you just hope that if you go and, like, roll a d4 or whatever else, you'll suddenly be fine? Like, there's all these little moments throughout it where you're wondering whether or not to go for a particular setup. And yeah, that is probably the best example of what a roguelike should be. You've got your permadeath thing, you've got some revives going on, and yes, I know that probably just that statement alone was enough to immediately piss off anyone that's a long-term fan of the genre or something, but bear with me, I'm getting to it. But anyway, the point is they took a lot of those correct mechanics, they boiled them down into a way that's understandable, and then they just put a slightly different spin on it. So, okay, that one was viewed as fine. That is, like, generally accepted as, okay, they did the proper roguelike thing, even though it's gone and classified as a roguelite. Now, South's The Pit, on the other hand, generally gets friggin' reviled by that same community because of because of two things. First off is the movement speed in it, which, okay, admittedly, the original version, pretty iffy on the slowness, but then a mod came out that basically fixed everything and allowed you to customize everything as much as you want, so that basically fixed it, but they still were pissed off, because there's a mechanic called Blue Room, in which you can more or less dump whatever items or, experience or whatever else you want onto a character. But usually, they stop reading right there! Because the idea is that, yes, you can put whatever you want, but it has to be from a character on that same floor, meaning that you will only get a crapload of mostly basic items. It's very, very, very exceptionally rare to get anything better on those first 5 floors, even on the highest difficulties. Second of all, yes, you can dump as much experience as you want, but oftentimes that doesn't even matter, because, again, you are capped for that floor. And to kind of describe that situation, you can, you immediately get up to whatever level it is, okay? So let's say, usually, you always start off in 1, usually around end game you're like 30 to 40. I did a run a while ago, in which I was curious to see what would happen if you jumped all the way to 100, courtesy of a nice person on the forums that ended up calculating what those numbers would be for me. I spent 6 months grinding out the experience for that, and grinding up all of the items and whatever else. That character was, again, they could only get those first 5 levels because they were on the 5th floor, meaning that they were permanently locked to their starting skills, more or less. So while there is kind of a sweet spot to get a little bit more out of it, more often than not, you end up severely gimped at the cost of some early game strength. So, yeah, it's one of those things that's actually a bit more elegant than most folks end up giving it credit for. Because, yeah, so what wound up with that character is, well, they ended up scaling all their stats to a degree that, well, their dodge stat was never meant to go that high. So, functionally speaking, they were immune to bullets, because they literally just could not be hit by them, because their dodge stat was pretty close to maxed out. So, that's the thing, the game was not meant to go that high, and still, it was a struggle to get through the entire thing, even with a character that practically couldn't get hit. So, there's so many things that do like scaling damage, or get past armor entirely, or just like various diseases and poisons and stuff like that that can end up happening. There's just so many little things that can happen that there's really no need to be so, pissy about it, for lack of a better term. So yeah, it was kind of weird to me that there's just such extreme revilement there. But oh well. Also, I just noticed, I misspoke earlier. It's not the Bardiche that you end up getting out of that crafting book. It's actually the, the Hache. The Hache. Or Hache, or however you pronounce that thing exactly. But yeah, the Hache is the first kind of like basic crafted three-tile spear you get. Technically, the Bardiche +1 is the first 3-tile spear, but in terms of like the standard of your endgame crafted spears, the Hache is where it starts, and then from there the Colcrium ends up replacing it in some scenarios, and then from there you can get better ones as time goes on. Like given how common the Colcrium is, I expected to run into one. That's why I have Augment Light on this guy right now. But yeah, surprisingly, no. No such luck on that one. I didn't end up getting a Colcrium, I think, until late Palace of the Dead. Even maybe the second time around. So yeah, it's going to be a minute till we get an elemental thing. But yeah, it's actually, that's part of the reason that the first POTE run ended up being such a chore, because, well, I didn't really have much of a good counter for a lot of the stuff in there, so it was just kind of sticking to overpowering all of it. And hope you like crafting, because there's a bunch of it now! So, yeah, at this point I was just trying to get a little bit of extra firepower to get through to the end game, as you do. I'm really glad, though, that I didn't end up going for POTD. Well, actually, come to think of it. No, I probably should have gone for POTD now. See, the weird part is, with POTD in this, it's... the timing of it is super awkward in terms of setting up your endgame how you want it to be. Because, okay, so if you go in the first part of the game, then you end up getting all your Nibith stuff out of the way. You can go straight to Blackmore. You get Secrets of the Master off of Nibith, so you're going to get a lot of your best crafting stuff and all that available. But it's the only time that you can get that book, so you'd have to go back in time and do Palace of the Dead in the past in order to make sure that Nibith is there. Now, the thing is, I think I'm not even sure if he appears if you don't take the Nibith fight in the very first chapter. I could be wrong on that. I'm used to always taking that fight, so kind of glad that I ended up taking that in the OV run now that I think about it, because I didn't actually test whether he's even there. Now that I think about it, I don't think that run needs Secrets of the Master, but I'm probably going to get it anyway. Oh well, whatever. That's neither here nor there. That's for another time. So yeah. At this point, the idea is just to get ready for Hanging Gardens. I had meant to go for what I thought was the flying ring on the top left of the map there. So a bit of a correction on that. There actually is not a flying ring there. That is a SNES version thing. I think they even might have taken it out in later versions. Actually, no. It was there in the PS1 version. That's why I thought it was there. But yeah, it's one of the clerics there that drops a Cloud Ring, and unfortunately it's not available in this one. I was really hoping it was, because a flying or teleporting ring of some description is almost necessary for a solo run. Actually, I'd say it's absolutely necessary for a solo run. So basically so yeah, that whole thing ended up flying out the window entirely. Though I guess a Cloud Ring would only be hover, it wouldn't really be fly. Oh well. Now I'm just kind of getting off track. So, sorry for the coughing. Okay, moving on though. So, what was I going to get at here? So yeah, as far as POTD goes, the timing of it is just super awkward, because if you want to do Nibith, you got to do that in Chapter 4. If you want to do Blackmore, you have to have done Nibith before. If you want to use your skips, you have to have gotten through the thing in both versions. So if you're in Chapter 4, then you can use them after you beat Nibith. If you're in Coda, you can only use them after you've done Roderick. Which is really annoying, because the only reason they're there is for some really tiny cutscenes. Like, we're talking really tiny cutscenes. Like, I kid you not. There's supposed to be a shortcut for everything all the way up to 75. So, in 25, I think, yeah, from 1 to 25, there's just nothing new added as far as the Roderick version goes. As far as 1 to, 50 to 75, they've got, like, one new cutscene in which he walks into a hallway, and a little kid shows up, and he's like, hey, you should go save the king or whatever. He's all like, oh man, this place is spooky, I don't like it. So yeah, there's like 50 extra floors you gotta do for that little cutscene. And then later on at, I believe it's 75, there's another one in which he sees the kid again. He's like, oh man, who is that though? And it's like, oh. Okay, we're not gonna answer that. We're just gonna ask that one question, and that'll be it. And be all super mysterious like that. And then you get to floor 115, it's like, oh, it was Roderick, oh man. What a big surprise. And yeah. Who would have thought reading the article about Roderick and going into the thing with all the dead people in it would give you Roderick? Neato. Now, I will say there's kind of an interesting implication that never really gets addressed in the game, as far as he goes. Because, okay, in the original SNES and PS1 version, Roderick was there. He's DLC in this one, technically. It was free DLC, but whatever. Point being, he's there in the original version. But he was the guy that gave you finishing moves. So, the way the Palace of the Dead worked, you just had a random selection of levels. They were almost all on the same map, and so you just ended up taking random fight after random fight. It was usually just 5v5, and you just took your little fight, went on to the next one, relatively quickish. So, I guess props to them for adding more variety. I don't know if the maps needed to be so big, but oh well. So yeah, what ends up happening in that whole thing is you occasionally run into Roderick, and he'll be like, oh man, I know all these crazy weapon secrets, who would you like to teach? And then they tell you what weapon it's for, and then you teach it to somebody, and then they get like a self-damaging finishing move, like you see in Knight of Lotus, for example. Even though for some reason the Knight of Lotus ones went with different names, but oh well. I suppose they would be coming from different regions, so why not? Now, what the interesting implication, though, is because while the names are different, a lot of those same ideas behind finishing moves are still, in the actual finishers. So that kind of implies that in this version, he ended up just kind of teaching them as a standard thing to his entire army, as you'd think he would have. And yeah, he just ends up teaching them as a standard, and so pretty much everybody ends up getting them once he ends up disappearing, or presumably Dorgallo ends up beating him, and he ends up teaching all those techniques to everybody else. But he ends up all pissed off and stuck in the Palace of the Dead and all angry and everything. So he's just kind of a wraith in this version, I guess. But yeah, I just kind of thought that was an interesting little lore implication, that's why everybody has finishers now, because he got beaten and taken over and all that kind of thing. Ah, that delicious coffee! Man, it's gonna be interesting to get back to doing live stuff again. I'm excited to get back to it. Right now I'm just waiting for my nose to clear out, because you can probably hear. I gotta take little pauses here and there, because my nose is just being weird. But again, that's just cold weather in general. Thankfully, didn't end up losing my voice like a whole lot of other family members did recently. I went and had 3 kind of diet Thanksgivings in a row. Don't know if anybody else here has a big family type situation going on, but man, it's a little bit complicated to try and get that stuff figured out sometimes. So, over the course of about 500 miles and about a week, we finally ended up getting some Thanksgiving for everybody. And only one person wound up pissed off, so yeah, that's a win. Even politics managed not to come up. So yeah, that's a definite win, especially right now. Actually, okay. Clarification, or not clarification, but correction. Politics came up once, and then swiftly got avoided. So there we go. That's about as good of a Thanksgiving as can be achieved right now, I would say anyway. Alright, so we're starting to get a little bit curb stompy here. Yeah, this fight is also super annoying in OB there. Like, this is one of those ones that pretty much it just boiled down to getting a good solid snipe off. Because yes, Denoska in this version likes to stay on the other side. He sends his lizards and he sends his octopi up forward. He just kind of sits there. Usually, most folks don't end up seeing that part though, because most of the time he just ends up getting shot with a bow, and that's the end of that. Since Beastmasters have absolutely sucky defenses. So anyhow, usually this fight isn't much of anything. In a solo, you kind of get to see a bit more of kind of what could have been, as it were. And then, yeah, in OV, you kind of get that big thing of, okay, there's a lot of meat to get through here. There's a lot of things to try and beat. And unfortunately, the downside of using a spear build here, and why a dagger build ends up getting used later on, to some degree anyway, is if you're cornered, well, you are very cornered. Giga Tempest is about the only way out of it. I mean, Spiral Scourge will take out one guy, but typically you want to be going for groups. So yeah, it's just a little bit of an issue because you have to use finishers to get out of stuff. They're just coming here and doing all their stuff, taking my bags of stuff that probably wasn't needed, but you know, money ends up being a problem later. And yes, we're at the point in the game where you can basically print free money. But oh my goodness, it's so tedious. It just takes forever. Like, at one point, I think I actually did go and do the orb trick. But man, it is such a time sink. Like, comical levels of time sink. Actually, back when I was doing the Fusilier only run, man, freaking setting up everything to do those orbs and everything else. I think I sat there doing my phone calls and everything else for a solid 8 hours just to be able to get through one fight in that. And that's kind of the point that I decided it just wasn't worth it, and ended up abandoning that run. Which, in retrospect, there's better ways for it to be handled, but you know, it just wasn't really something that felt like it was worth continuing. Though I will say, I have some ideas in mind on how to do solo class challenges in the future. So that basically that just means you're locked into one class and have to get all the way to the end. So yeah, I have a few ideas on how that could work. For those that don't know why it would be a challenge, yes, the early game you're pretty overpowered, but then by the time you get to the end there, you're in a position where you can, where you're usually getting threatened by pretty much everything because you have no base stats built up. So it's interesting. It's potentially very interesting, but yeah, the problem is that the balance is kind of janky. Okay, there we go. Basically, Spiral Scourge on anything will delete it, up to and including both of the end bosses. So that's always nice. It's a nice little punchy weapon there. Tasty coffee! Okay. So I forget what exactly I was trying to change here. I kept looking at that Dragoon thinking, well, maybe I should go to it, maybe I should go to it, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. Oh, ended up going for daggers, apparently. How about that? Yeah, it's been like 3 months, I think, since I actually finished this run. So yeah, been a hot minute. Oh, I was looking for Strength in 4, that's what it was. But I ended up picking up Sanguine. I don't think I ended up even using Sanguine for anything, because I was kind of overthinking the next couple fights a little bit. Alright, getting my daggers, as you do. Deflect going. Man, such a bummer about deflect. Can't believe it takes so long to train up. And then right back to crafting, as you do. Wanted to see if I could make the next shield, and no, I didn't have the materials on hand. Though realistically, I didn't really need to, because I had the proof ability on that one. Because that poison proof ends up working out just fine. You already know you want to go with that shield, just leave it alone, it's fine, you're overpowered as hell. Go to the next map. You can do it. You have the technology. There we go. Okay, so we get to Orem and Mr. Hanzo here. So yeah, the reason that I ended up going for the dagger for this one is just because you end up getting cornered on the stairs a good bit. So that can get to be a problem. And go figure. Went through all that stuff, forgot to pick up more plumes. Absolutely brilliant. Definitely a smart play there. Just completely forget those items. One of the most important buffs you can get. No, let's just completely forget it. Worry about which proof to put on the shield instead. Yep. After one-shotting everything, basically. Like I will say, daggers are probably more or less the optimal choice. They kind of suck against bosses, but honestly, aside from that, they're just so OP, it's not even funny. They just do so much. Who thought it was balanced? Probably nobody. I would still argue it's an oversight that they're as strong as they are. So yeah, same old meat grinder approach for this one. It's gonna sit and carve everything like the nice turkey. Turkey. Man, there's so much turkey in the fridge right now. I love it. Had this awesome thing of like green bean casserole with this creamed corn kind of thing with potatoes and sweet potatoes and then gravy and then all that turkey and cranberries and oh man, it's so good. Man, anybody that's not getting Thanksgiving is missing out. It's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. Love it. What's funny is that, yeah, one of the 3 Thanksgivings that we had ended up kind of lazing out and deciding to go to a buffet instead, which actually still worked out pretty well. It's actually funny because it's one of those few holidays where you can legitimately just kind of announce you're going to celebrate with everybody at a buffet and nobody really blinks an eye because the entire point of the holiday is to eat too much. So sure, why not? Nothing to celebrate screwing over the locals quite like eating too much. It's an interesting holiday. Alright. I don't really know why I didn't go for the double fang there. That would have been the finisher that I was looking for. Oh well. That would have ended the fight right there. And we're getting it knocked back instead. Actually, this is one of those funny hidden benefits they end up seeing in OV a good bit. That you run into... yeah, there we go. Why didn't you use that in the first place, you dingus? Alright, but yeah, Steadfast on powered armor kind of tends to get kind of overlooked in terms of how useful it actually is. Because, yeah, Steadfast by itself is honestly not a skill you can end up taking that often. But yeah, to get it for free on armor is really strong, so it's good stuff. So didn't end up going down the Fusilier line for this one. Not yet, anyway. Go handle Heim, as you do. Don't usually end up taking this castle fight that often, because it's a little bit tedious. Just because the knights end up locking you in around the middle of the map. Actually, I'm not sure why this is one of the ones that they decided was really good for the multiplayer. I would actually say this is one of the weaker castle maps, but it's the one they went with, so why not? I mean, I've asked a couple times. I don't know if... I think Rake said it wasn't possible to adjust the maps in multiplayer. Because I would say, as far as the castle maps go, there's... it's like they picked the specifically worst ones for any particular thing. Like, okay, castle maps, like, I would figure, okay, do El Morica or something like that, you know, it's got some awesome stuff there, or the bridge map in Crit and I there, or, I don't know, any of them, but not this one. It's just such a weird one to pick for it, you know, and then the other one they have is the, what's it, I think it's Bardiche, the northern icy one, except you only fight on the top end of the castle, so you don't really get any actual castle action going on. I don't know, it's just kind of weird. Alrighty, and back after a short little break here. So yeah, back to Dragon Castle and all that kind of thing. Not really too much threat coming on from those archers up there. I believe in the SNES version they had 3 or 4 up there that were a little bit more of an issue. Now, funnily enough, I think they were actually Hawkmen who just never came down, which honestly kind of makes a bit more sense. Anywho, bad roll against that dragon there. That actually should have been a one-shot, but oh well. The second one ended up rolling 5 under for whatever reason, because it was supposed to be a 1 and 1 on the end there. It was actually pretty much exact. It would have been exactly a one-shot. Oh well, such things just weren't meant to happen apparently. But all we really need is to get up to the leader there, and it's all good. Which thankfully is not a terribly difficult thing to do, especially in this version. All we gotta do is just keep charging forward. These ones, I believe, are, I believe it's at a 20? Yeah, they're at 21, so a decent level advantage going into this one, on top of the usual base stat advantages. The actual level advantage isn't really as much of a thing at this point, but it's enough, you know, it's enough. Like, they can do decent damage, but even in the scaled fights, we're doing pretty okay against everything that wasn't a dragon. Or a golem, or, in some cases, griffins. But, you know. Also, there's one of the very few deflect procs over the course of this run. Actually, come to think of it, there wasn't even really that few of them, now that I think about it. Later on in POTD, I'm pretty sure there's a point at which 4 deflects proc in a row. Because, yeah, ultimately, the odds of that happening only got up to about 20%. But yeah, the odds weren't terrible, they're just not terribly amazing. I should mention, on the flip side, for the OV side of things, there was a 45% chance to completely ignore melee by the time we got to well, hell, long before this point, actually. So there was that. Now, what I should have done there is just go for the leader, go for the one shot. For some reason, I didn't go and check whether that would work. I think my thinking was that their stats would be slightly higher, so the Double Fang would be slightly not enough, so I'd probably need 1 hit plus a Double Fang, or just 2 regular melee hits there. But either way, it's not the end of the world. It was just kind of more of a panic heal there. Actually, come to think of it, I think I was thinking the dragon's running Rampart 2. I think it might only be running Rampart 1. Could be wrong on that, but either way, we go for the Double Fang here. Yeah, not quite enough. None of them are really going to be enough, because these ones don't scale off of, don't scale damage. So what we're going to need is we're going to need another Mending Seed, get a little bit more health out of it, and then just kind of take out some more of the support while waiting for that opportunity to take a swing at the leader there. These will occur sometimes. Just gotta wait for those openings. Now, the funny part is, this is where the interesting comparison between the 2 versions of the game come to mind. Because in this version, yeah, a lot of it is based more towards defensive play, funnily enough, despite the fact that there's fewer defensive options. But yeah, when it came to overcoming defenses for the AI and stuff like that, sometimes it was tricky just because of max damage type stuff. But then other times you just completely overwhelmed just on complete accident, not even really trying and all that kind of stuff. So for example, right there, ended up finally getting the swing I was looking for, but I think now he is under 100. Not 100% sure. Yeah, just barely under 100. Which is kind of annoying, but oh well. It is what it is. Now, what I mean by this, because in this one, for example, right there, you go for the finisher, and it's just slightly too low. So that situation ends up happening a lot more often. Also, I'm not sure if that if kids' toys coming on in the background. The kiddos are up at this point, so they just found one of the singing toys. But what I'm trying to get at here is, yeah, for this one, you know, it was just slightly not enough, whereas the same scenario in OV essentially consists of getting 275 TP, and then just running up and trying to take them out in one single shot, instead of trying to set up a way to take them down there. Now, this is also kind of a routing issue, to be fair. But either way, what I was trying to get at as far as defensive options go. So, like in this one, yeah, your parries are more than likely always going to stay at pretty low levels. It's very unlikely that you'll get them up there, which again just feels really weird considering how often everybody's fighting and parrying and deflecting and how essential of a thing it is for people to kind of stay alive in these scenarios. But, you know, I guess that's just kind of the way RPGs like to view it. But, oh well. So yeah. The odds end up being pretty low in this one, so you end up having to rely a lot on innate defenses and whatnot else, which, again, are just kind of all over the dang place in this one. So, okay, now to get to my actual point, since I'm rambling like a complete moron here. Generally speaking, when it comes to defensive options, it mostly consists of, okay, do you have a shield, and what class are you in vanilla? Because the innate class defenses are going to matter more than body armor or anything else in most cases. Shields end up boosting defense enough that they will usually make a difference in the end game. Not as much in the early game. Sorry again. This cough's annoying. Anywho, so yeah, just the point is, your actual defensive options are relatively limited. Whereas a lot of the OV run consists of swapping out your equipment over and over to try to have the correct defenses for the right scenario. So for example, like, let's say you've got a whole bunch of archers, but you've also got a few heavy melee units, you're probably better off just going with heavy armor there with a with kind of a sidestep type setup. Just because, like, let's say there's some casters in the back, you want to be able to resist them long enough to actually get there. Other times, like, let's say a vest and rune leggings are really strong in the mid-game, just kind of up to tier 2 casters typically tend to bounce off those leggings a good bit of the time. The evasion that those two put together ends up avoiding melee and range a lot of the time. Ends up avoiding a decent bit of debuffs, but it can't really take finishers too well. So then, later on, you end up having to create situations where you're trying to be able to survive specific finishers and that kind of thing. It's fun. Fun little puzzle there. Alright, so, yeah, right here, the flying castle, as I like to call it, since I will forever remember that one weird time where Warlocks could give everybody levitate. Or not levitate, there's some kind of flying ability that they managed to give everybody, so you just wound up with a bunch of flying units all over this map. It was fantastic. I wonder if Rakes would put together a patch to put that back in. That mess was fun. Oh well. So, oh, by the way, it's too late to change it for this run, but I think for the other run, I'm gonna go ahead and change what denim looks like every episode. It's just too much fun. There's too many options in there to putz around with. It's good times. But one of the reasons I was actually wondering whether it would be possible to make a generic denim is because I've actually had an idea for a while for a roguelike tactics ogre type situation. And by the way, this guy ends up needing to have the entire map friggin' wiped to take him out, because he's got some of the best defense in the game, and he's got a lot of support, is the thing. So, it ends up taking a good long while to take this guy out. He's unfortunately a absolute wall, and more than likely, we wouldn't really have too much better luck with a spear, just because we'd have a much harder time in the early parts. I guess Spiral Scourge would be dramatically better in this scenario, but still. So, I end up deciding that the best way to actually approach this is to just kind of take out everything up there. Oh, wait. So we'll get there little by little as they all throw a billion skills out. By the way, if you ever want to see that carried to its absolute disgusting limit, just go play the Japanese version. Everybody just pulling out every single buff on every single turn, never wasting a second to try to use some buff even if they don't need it. Like, oh man, the friggin' knight totally needs spellcraft. Yeah, that's really gonna help. It's like, no, I gotta have my buffs, guys. I gotta have my buffs. It scratches their friggin' arm. It's like, I gotta have mine still holy, man. But that's a wizard. They're not even gonna hit anything. Like, no, but I gotta have mine stills, man. I gotta do it. So, you know, interesting choices on that one. And this guy is one of the few AIs, by the way, that's really good at blocking stairs. I'm not sure why he's specifically made differently, but yeah, this castle is one of the few that seems like it's almost intentionally scripted like it was in the original versions. So I just kept going for basic attacks here, hoping that eventually he'd get out of the way. Just kind of building up meter in the meantime. I went for Guardian Force. That's perfectly fine. Actually, that's one thing that can be really abused in this case. Because, yeah, knights are nigh invincible by themselves, but if they decide to put themselves near a bunch of squishy units, and for example, right here, you happen to have a finisher, which this would have been perfect. Would have been absolutely perfect. I'm looking at the guy thinking, like, man, I'm going to do, like, friggin' 400 or something. But yeah, ended up just going for the cleric instead, because that guy's got his shield up. Downside is, Double Fang, despite being a double attack, both of them will bounce off the shield because they are counted as one movement. So it essentially blocks one physical movement of any kind, whether it's items, whether it's anything really. It's actually one of the reasons that if you use Recruit on somebody that's got a shield up, it's got a pretty decent chance to remove it. Yeah, if you're ever looking for a reason to have a recruit other than actually recruiting, it's a perfect way to get rid of evade. And this actually applies in both versions, if you didn't know. So yeah, if you're having an annoying thing with people with shields, give somebody recruits. Especially since in the base game they technically speaking have infinite range. For whatever reason, it seems to still roll a chance to remove the shield, even though it technically has 0% chance to hit. I'm not really sure why. But yeah, it's just a weird quirk of how it goes. But yeah, Recruit, definitely the best way to get rid of that. Funnily enough, most of the other side effects that you can do, as I like to call them, they're not really side effects in the usual term. I mean side effects in terms of like the abilities that you can turn on to hit everything to your sides. Pretty much all of those count as physical, so that'll do the job as well. But, you know, whichever one just happens to be more convenient at the time. Coffee. It's rolling all those blocks there. I was so happy the other day. I managed to roll a 2% and a 3%, one after another. Never be able to pull that off again. Not that there was really much being pulled off there. So at this point, I was kind of worried about a bunch of finishers flying in, because there's finishers that should be loaded up from the archers. At least they seem to be pretty close. I knew that guy had a finisher, and then that guy seemed like he had a Renegade in him. But was wrong because he went for the Guardian Force instead. Should have really gone for the Double Fang on the Wizard here. I probably would have taken the job, done the job real good there. But no such luck. Oh, please tell me I shield bash that guy off the wall. Come on, do it! Oh, do it. You know you want to. Come on. Yeah! I love that. That right there is my favorite part of the series. It's so rare that it lines up like that, but man, the castle fights... It annoys me sometimes that they put braziers right on the very bottom of the castle. Because so many times that'll prevent them from being knocked off, like right here. I would be able to knock that wizard off, but I can't, because there's a friggin' plant on the bottom. So they can't technically land on that tile, so it prevents them from being moved. And I was mentioning this in the other run, but it's actually one of the reasons that having innate Wade on some classes is a bit of a weakness. Because if they can learn Wade, or if they know Wade, or if they have something that lets them walk in water one way or another, if there's a water tile, they can get knocked into it. If there isn't, that basically means that they can stand with a water tile at their back and know that they can't get knocked backwards. Less necessary when you're running powered armor or something like that, but still, you know, it's a nice thing to have, is what I'm getting at. There you go. Now, funny thing. So yesterday I was watching this documentary on Agincourt. So I'm pretty sure most everybody knows what that is. If for some reason you don't, it's this massive battle between England and France. Basically this one that kind of led to that whole myth of arrows piercing armor and all that kind of thing. Which it's one of those yes but also no kind of situations. Also another satisfying wall bash. Because yeah, as has been tested multiple times, it's one of those things like, yeah, they didn't really pierce plates, they pierced mail between plates and things like that, and then after somebody's getting shot a few hundred times, yeah, something's eventually going to get through type of situation. So yeah, it was one of those. So, anywho, there was this discussion from the same people that did this really good test of all that recently. And it's one thing that I never really thought about too much, and bear in mind, this does get back to TO, so get into it, but, okay, they specifically mention, and there are specific documentations that when the French knew that they were going to be fighting archers, that they specifically went for heavier armor configurations on all of their infantry. And it's one of those interesting things that, I don't know, for some reason, it just never occurred to me, that it's just like, of course, they would have heavier and lighter configurations for different situations. Why wouldn't they? I have no idea why that ended up coming to mind. Also, I just want to point out, Balzaphon was carrying nothing around the entire time, and nobody noticed. Like, that thing's a friggin' like gigantic glowing Christmas tree of a sword. How do you not notice? Anywho, so what I was getting at though is in this series, it always kind of bugged me. It's like you're basically giving them a couple pieces of armor, you know, and just like a couple different things. Like, do they just have nothing else anywhere else? And then it occurred to me, they clearly must just have a passive, just whatever normal set is, and then whatever two pieces you're giving them are basically their alteration to whatever their loadout is. They just simply, you know, either can't bear the weight of anything more, or who knows what the actual justification would be, but it makes sense that they're just kind of slapping it on top of whatever their usual setup would be. Now, I don't know why, like, after years of looking at this game and having that particular thought running in my head, I don't know why it was that exact statement that suddenly made that click in my head, but I just find it funny. Also, I love how the big dramatic art in the background looks basically nothing like the castle. No. Oh well, they tried. They tried. Yeah, the fight with Mr. Morn here. The let's rule the Isles together as dude and uncle. Doesn't really have the doesn't exactly have the ring of father and son, but what can you do, right? Yeah, these nice squishy TKs he's got going on. Man, I will say, I think these TKs actually have lower stats than they're supposed to. This might be a weird thing, but almost every run that I've gotten up to this point, it always felt like they went down far easier than they should have, especially compared to Morn himself. Like, the archers seem pretty dang strong, the Fusiliers seem pretty dang strong, the, like, Morn is an absolute beast, and then all his frontline knights here are just, like, made of frickin' paper. So I always kind of wondered now if maybe they were meant to be ornamental, maybe they just had lower stats on purpose, or maybe it was meant for sale. Let's ask Alex about that, actually. Is there a hell of a lot? I mean, granted, TK's way tougher than OB anyway, but I just mean, it seems really weird how paper thin they are. I think they're getting a little too deflect there, finally. It only took forever. Now, prepare for it to be near worthless for a good chunk. Yep. Try him. No, he got completely overpowered max range daggers. How'd that happen? That can't possibly work that way. And then that part's done. So that's kind of technically where the game should have ended, but then it didn't. So yeah, with this choice, by the way, Casual will always end up picking the second one if she's alive at that point, because she'll be the one taking over. If you pick the one to ignore that your people are being dickheads, you basically wind up in a bit of an awkward spot. Anyway, go ahead and turn on the news here. Make sure to activate all the different side battles and all that kind of thing. I was considering to go get Azelstan, but it was already too late. And there we go. Go deal with Old Man Jones over here. So, interesting note, if you saw the video about the character editor, there's one specific portrait for Cashwood that doesn't get used, and I think it was supposed to be used here. Now, apparently it can't be put back in because it crashes the game, but yeah, maybe that's why they ended up not changing it, because there was just too much weird with Cashwood or something, who knows. I mean, granted, she's dead at this point, so she wouldn't be showing up, but it's just basically this one that looks like she stubbed her toe, and or some people said it kind of looks like there's maybe something a bit dirtier going on, but you know, it is what it is. So, at this point, I ended up deciding to change my mind on the whole Fusilier thing, because there's one thing in particular that I wanted to do. Because I kept thinking back to the Rimfire there, I'm like, I really want to go all John Wick on one of these castles, so just kind of decided to go on a little bit of a detour here. Go deal with Lufa Coast as you do. This fight's not terribly difficult, but it can be a little bit problematic. It all just depends entirely on whether or not those Octopi go down early. So if you get the spawn with 4 of them here, they can be a little bit difficult to deal with. The main thing, like the main trick to this fight is just making sure to have the meters filled up at all times. So yeah. Wait, sorry. But yeah, probably should have gone in here with the Dragoon. I don't remember if I ended up failing the first time coming back with the Dragoon or not. Yes, we'll be finding that out in just actually, no, we won't, because I will absolutely get wrecked here in a second. I saw that timestamp. Oh, crap. We got 1 minute to death. Yep. It's time to dead. And I think, yeah, that was the one that started it all. Because, yeah, oof. We're not quite into scaled up territory. It is level, I want to say 32 or 33 that ends up scaling up the game. For Chapter 4. Yeah, it was the Petrify that did it. Right. Okay, so without Petrify, there was a chance. With Petrify, yeah, no. We're boned. We're boned! But, oh well. That'll be life for you. Sometimes you just wind up a little bit screwed and you don't know what to do. And, it's at those times that you probably just reach for the cream. Anywho. That'll be that for this part then, and I will see you guys in the next one. But once we hit the end of Chapter 4, stuff's going to be a lot more active, let's say. I'm going to try to start choppying everything. Because, yeah, we still have normal fights up to this point, but then, yeah, Coda gets a little bit repetitive. So, thank you guys for stopping by. Appreciate it. Appreciate the support that's been shown for these series, because they have taken a surprisingly lengthy amount of time to do. And, yeah, have yourselves a fantastic one, and take care.